So we are back again. Feels like yesterday, but 10 months ago we sat down together. I don't even think we had cameras at that point.
Right.
And so you're the one that kind of helped kick us off and here to wrap us up here in the end. And really kick us off from the very get-go. So thank you again from the Department of Agriculture for providing the grant that allowed the growing season to be.
Yeah, no, well, you bet. And, 10 months goes really quick. It seemed like that was yesterday, but we're you have just been great partners, and we appreciate what y'all are doing, cover these important stories, and so we appreciate y'all doing that.
Absolutely. So we've got a lot to talk about. We've learned a lot from a lot of different farmers this year. Kind of on the department side of things, what has 2022 looked like? Have there been any big changes in the building?
No, it's we track pretty closely with the industry and what's going on throughout the year and across the different sectors of agriculture. And 2022 has just been a difficult and challenging year across the board. And we've had other things that have went on too that have made that interesting as well. But it's been an election year, and so we've seen some of that. We've seen at the federal level as well as at the state level, of just kind of looking at what impact those sort of things have on agriculture as a whole. But you look at our state across the year, and we had a wet spring, a very hot and dry summer, and then you kind of got conditions were good enough where people could harvest their crops during the fall, and maybe get a little work done ready for next year. So it's been a roller coaster all the way through.
You talk about the dry summer, and we had a climate expert come in for an episode and really talk about kind of the freak of nature that this summer was, and kind of like last summer. Last summer was a headache too. And you and I were just talking about it. One of the most surprising things I saw is we've got some farmers in Friendship, Arkansas that are raising hay. And so the hay industry really kind of got turned upside down this year.
Yeah, no, it really did. And so, I would say it's probably early July time frame was, late June, early July. Like it was hot and it was dry. And so that compounded very quickly. I remember we got a phone call during the middle of the week. It's like, we need you to go to North Central Arkansas to a livestock market to a sale barn. They were going to have a bunch of producers. They were struggling with the drought conditions and trying to help. And we were having conversations with Governor Hutchinson on what can we do, and reaching out to USDA. So, even early on during the hot and dry summer, like it was pretty evident pretty quickly that the cattle producers, the hay producers, were really going to take a really rough summer, and they certainly did.
Right. And I mean, the folks we talked to, they went so far as to, they had some neighbors.
Yeah.
Some threats were called in on some property. I mean, is that common? I mean, do we see that often around the state?
Yeah, you hate to hear those sort of stories. For the most part, agriculture, we're good neighbors. We know each other. We know our neighbors. We work together. We help each other out. And so, but when you have these really stressful sort of situations, everybody's just on edge. And and I hope that situation resolved itself in a nice way. And and hopefully that's kind of in the past now, but it happens. You have a lot of stress, and you have a lot of things riding on your ability to make a living, and the health of your animals and your fields and your crops. And so you go through a situation like that, and like everybody's on edge, and those sort of tempers can flare, and it's pretty easy for those sort of situations to happen. You just hope that they can get over it and move on.
Right, and I think it's probably more of an illumination, less of who those people are, and more of an illumination. And I'm part of me's glad we were there to cover it.
Sure.
That's how dire the situation was. I mean, I think a lot of people, it's hot. Man, that's hard on farmers.
Oh, that's right.
And it's like, no.
That's right.
It's a serious situation.
No, that I think is a great point, that agriculture deals with a lot. For most people, they're, and I don't mean in a negative way, but they're commuting back and forth to work. They've got their job. Everything's fun. Oh, it's hot outside today. Oh, it's been a hot summer. Yes, it has. But what if your livelihood depends on raising hay or cattle, and that doesn't happen? I mean, it's been a very challenging year, and sometimes people outside of agriculture just forget the risk and the challenges that the producers and the industry as a whole faces, and hopefully even through this podcast, that we're identifying that and helping to educate people of why that's so important.
Right. Yeah, and another, early on, one of the stories that I was really excited to tell, because it it's the kind of farming that I've been most familiar with in my life is, the high tunnel farming. I've kind of paid attention to that as I've gotten older and toyed with the idea of becoming a farmer myself. But we've been following the story of Larry Galligan in northwest Arkansas, and he's a high tunnel farmer. And, things got dry enough this year that he kind of made the choice, and he works for the university now, and farming kind of took that back seat to becoming a side hustle. Do we see a lot of that? Is that pretty common across Arkansas?
It is where people can, and they've got opportunities. It's not unusual for farmers to have some off-farm income, and for good reason. The risks are so high. They've got to have some sort of supplemental income or some sort of consistent, steady stream of income that. Not that farming is a hobby, but it's just can sometimes be very, the ups and downs are very significant.
Hard to swallow.
That's right. They need that extra income to kind of get them through those difficult times for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Our podcast was supposed to cover stories of mental health and the tools used to cope with those struggles. On the other side of the coin, I think so much of what we've talked about is perseverance. So many. Early on, I wanted farmers to talk about their feelings and how they were coping, and like with Darren Davis or with the Beardens in Friendship, so much you hear is just like, well, that's the way it goes. That's just the way that we'll deal with it when it goes. And so, how do you think? What role do you think perseverance plays?
Oh, it's crucial. I think I don't know that there's anybody in agriculture that doesn't recognize that there's going to be hard times. I mean, it's just like you just know it. Like, even in a good year, you're always optimistic. This year's going to be better than last year, but you also know like this year's going to have challenges, and this year's been no different. But the resilience, the perseverance is so crucial. They know that challenges are going to present themselves, and it's just keep putting one foot in front of the other. It's like work through it, get over it, keep moving, keep working.
Darren in East Arkansas, he just seemed to every month it was something different. Like I said, with the hay farmers, it was, man, I wish we had rain. And for several months it was, man, I wish we had rain. Whereas with Darren, it was wet in the spring, and he couldn't get soybeans in the ground. It was dry in the summer and nothing was growing. And then when it came time for harvest, his equipment was breaking down on him.
Oh my goodness.
And so, I mean, what kind of solutions, for the, because equipment has gotten outrageously expensive.
That's right. Yeah. No, it's just part of it. I wish I had. I guess maybe that's the point. I wish there was a better answer of like, oh, well, here's what you do in those situations. But it's just kind of like, you're gonna have to get creative and find a way to work through it. Similar stories. People that I've talked to over the last few months, had a good harvest weather. They were able to get in the fields and get things done. But similar stories. The tractor broke down first day. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, finally we get decent weather, and now I'm dealing with this.
Yeah, you're just waiting for all the tumblers to fall into place.
That's
one thing, and one thing Darren talks about, he's the mayor of Lakeview. Not only is he out there farming like 1,600 acres, but he's the mayor of Lakeview, Arkansas.
That's right.
And so I think one thing he's really talked about is that lending of equipment through the community. He lets people borrow things.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that's where agriculture really shines. So, whether it's trying to help get a crop in or trying to help move cattle or whatever the case may be. The industry. You hate to hear the negative stories because they happen for sure. And hopefully it's just circumstantial, just a one-off sort of situation. But for the most part, the industry works great together. And there are challenges for sure, but we try to help each other. We try to be supportive, and if someone needs something, we usually try not to leave them out to dry. It's like, that's your problem. You got to figure it out your own. It's like we're usually there for each other.
Yeah, no, I remember early on in the spring, he bought a new case tractor. It wasn't running right. Yeah. They took it into the shop. They drove it like a quarter of a mile, and the engine blew up. And it's just like, oh my God. But again, it kind of comes back to that idea of perseverance. Of every month, one of these farmers would drop a story on my lap where I'm like, I don't know how you're coming back. Like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm going to talk to you next month because, and every month, all 6 of them showed up
Yeah, that's right. It really is just a testament to their personal as well as the industry's resilience and perseverance. Like they're going to keep going, and they're not going to be down until they're out for the count because they're going to find a way to get back up.
Right. We talk about we've kind of had some old guard farmers like
Yeah.
Darren, like Will Norton up in Harrison. I mean, these guys grew up with their dads
Yeah.
doing it, and they're
Yeah.
doing it just. And then we've also kind of talked about the future of farming, and Arkansas PBS has had several projects on the table. Earlier this year, we produced a documentary called Dirt with the
that's right.
NRCS.
Yeah.
Our in-house producer Jennifer Gibson produced that, and we actually got the chance to talk to Hallie Schaffner from Schaffner Seed, and kind of this understanding of soil, and some farmers are changing their practices. What do you kind of see happening there?
No, I think the Dirt documentary that was excellent, very well done, and I would encourage people to watch that if they haven't. But I think I think there's just a recognition. I think overall within the agriculture industry, you hear a lot of, this is the way I've always done it. And there are certainly some people that have that mindset, like, I'm never changing. This is the way I grew up doing, and I ain't doing it different. But, especially most of the people that we interact with, it's like, how do I improve it? How do I make it better? How do I improve the land? And I think that's more an accurate representation of agriculture. Like, they're always looking for ways to do things better or different, and soil health, animal health, crop rotations, all of those sort of things. It isn't necessarily just a buzzword because there may be some federal funding for climate smart commodities or whatever the program is. It's legitimate producers on the ground saying, this is my land, this is I'm providing the food, fiber, fuel, and shelter for the world. Mm-hmm. How do I do it better? How do I do it in a more effective and efficient way?
Right, absolutely. No, I mean, I look back to like growing up in Cave City, watching my grandparents farm, and I feel like it was always, what am I taking to the sale barn? What am I taking to the farmer's market? It was always about that product, the quantity of product that I could deliver. Yeah. Whereas now I feel like our focus is falling more back to that health of the entire cycle. Yeah. Keeping that system up and going. Yeah. And I think, so much of, especially watching the Beardens with their hay fields and their cows this summer, so much of it is longevity. Not only what's going to guarantee that I have a good year this year, but what's going to guarantee that I have a good year in 10 years.
That's right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I think I think it's across the board, whether it's looking at, Governor Hutchinson has been very supportive of the large-scale irrigation projects in Arkansas, the Grand Prairie and Biomeda, and that's what that is that's we use Arkansas has a lot of water, but we also have groundwater depletion and aquifer depletion. So what happens if we run out of water? It's like, well, we can't grow rice as well. So how do we transition from groundwater to surface water? And so just that same mindset of like, we can do better, and not just for this year, but for 20, 30, 40 years down the road. Like, what do we need to do to position ourselves for the future of the industry in our state and our
just
country?
Working smarter with what you've got.
That's right.
So what does we kind of talk about the soil. I mean, do we see anything on the horizon? Like I said, this is our 10th episode. We're kind of asking the farmers to say, all right, we've spent a year with you. What does next year look like? So what does the future for farming look like in Arkansas?
Yeah, no, I think we're at a very interesting time from a government standpoint, and I think that kind of, there's a lot of factors that go into a successful agriculture year, but in particular, I mentioned the elections this year. So we have, for Arkansas in particular, we got Senator Bozeman, who's the ranking member of the Senate Ag Committee. You got Congressman Crawford on the House Ag Committee. You got Congressman Westerman on the Natural Resource Committee. And why is that important? It's like, well, because on the federal level, they're about to work on a farm bill, and that's important for the policies and the programs that exist for the agriculture industry. On the federal level, and on the state level, we're about to start a legislative session in January. So the things that impact producers, and whether it's a tax credit or just a program and incentives for different things, and the rules for different programs. All of those sort of things are important. So 2023 will be a lot of that sort of stuff, but on the ground, even really not on the ground, we're still dealing with the Russia-Ukraine issue. We're still dealing with supply chain issues, and so I think those will continue. What's fertilizer going to look like as we get into early next year? So I think as it exists now, I think people are trying to make decisions as best they can, but it's still some uncertainty. I think that will probably hopefully solidify over the next few months, and we'll have a decent spring and summer. I suspect 2023 will be very similar to 2022. I think we'll have ups and downs. We'll still be dealing with the supply chain issues and those sort of things, but hopefully we can avoid some of the weather circumstances. And
maybe the weather will be
year.
a little nicer.
That's right.
We've kind of talked about the more classic forms of farming that we followed, hay farmers, row crop farmers. We did kind of have two wild card farmers, as I like to call them, this year. One of them was the Peplers in Northwest Arkansas.
Yes.
And so agritourism, so that was probably one of the most eye-opening
Yeah.
things to me following this year.
Well, the Peplers are a great family, and they've got a great place up there. You know, we've been involved with them, and they've been helpful on several things. You know, we've got a Buffalo River Conservation Committee. They've up and the Buffalo River is just a great tourist attraction for so many people. It's just beautiful up there, and they go up there and can see the river and see that sort of landscape. They're right there close, helping to promote agriculture and tourism and make that connection. And they do a lot of great work, and they continue to grow, and people continue to learn about them and what they do on their farm. And so I think there's growing interest from consumers in general that are maybe a little bit removed from the farm of saying, I'm kind of interested on where my food comes from, and then how you cook it, and that's what the Peplers will do. It's like they invite you on the farm. They show you where the food comes from, and they cook the meals, and it's like you get the whole experience.
The whole
it's
circle.
Like this makes sense. Like
Absolutely.
this is what puts food on my table, and
Right.
so it's really neat.
And spending a year with them, and like I said, we've been focused on mental health. They have this monthly potluck at their table where they're inviting young farmers, old farmers from around Marshall. And again, I would say if one theme of our podcast has been perseverance, the other theme has been community. Just really eye-opening to see them kind of share their experiences with everybody around them.
Yeah, and I hope that we can continue to do more things like that. I think they set a great example, and I think those things happen often without any sort of fanfare or publicity, whether it's just a coffee shop in town where farmers and people in the industry can just sit down and talk over a cup of coffee, but the Peplers and the ability to get people together and, break bread and share stories, and here's what I'm dealing with. What are you dealing with? How are you dealing with this problem? We talk about the perseverance of working through issues. A lot of that is just communicating with neighbors. Like, have you done this before? Like, how'd you get through this? And they help each other. They talk through. It's like, try this, try that may work. And so, great opportunities to learn and grow and help each other.
Yeah, no, there have been, of course, we have our Good Roots segment that we do every month, and there have been whispers over the last couple of weeks of maybe going up to the Peplers and sitting in on one of these potlucks.
Oh,
maybe.
Absolutely.
My only concern is, man, I'm worried we go up there and set up 3 cameras and everybody's going to clam. That's what you always worry about. Is normally it's a very lively time, but they see the we may have to hide the cameras and behind the curtains or something.
That's right.
Our other kind of wild card farmer that I was really, from the outset, I saw this person come in on my questionnaire, and I got really excited. It was Donna Kilpatrick out at Heifer Ranch.
Yeah.
And just what an incredibly unique situation, not only for our podcast, but for Arkansas to be home to. It's an international player in agriculture.
Yeah.
Donna has really, in the last couple of months, we kind of talked about moving towards the future and advancing our methods. And Donna's kind of talking about going back to native grasses and kind of, have you heard much about this?
I think there's growing interest for that. Certainly we see some larger size farms that are important and help to produce a lot of the production that we see. But we see some of the smaller scale farms are saying, what is it that unique that I can do? Is it the traditional practices, that sort of stuff that's a little bit different from the larger commercial side that has a tie to agritourism and gets people interested and gets people out to the farm to see how that goes. So I think that will continue to grow. I really do, especially around the areas where you've got some agritourism possibilities and more urban areas where they can get out to a farm and see that. But it ties back to the conservation practices as well. Are there lessons learned in the past that that really made sense how we did it that long ago? So maybe we need to go back to doing it that way.
Back to considering it. Yeah, no, it's been very interesting to kind of see her because, a couple of months ago it was kind of what can we do to conserve water, and then she's had an opportunity to work with some folks called the Savory Institute, and she's taken a couple of trips, and then she came back I think in October and kind of said, I think it's native grasses.
Yeah.
I think it may be native grasses, and it may be bison. So
Okay.
yeah, she's kind of
that's
she's got
awesome.
some big ideas,
That's
and I'm
great.
kind of like, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, like we said, we're on episode 10.
Yeah.
We're kind of at the end of our journey. We're about to go off into the sunset here. And so is there anything else that you or the Department of Agriculture wants to kind of, this is your soapbox. Is there any other message you kind of want to share with us?
No, I would just say, one, that y'all been great partners, and we just appreciate y'all doing this and helping to share those stories. And it's incredibly important, and I hope that the people that are listening, can get that point of, the resiliency and the perseverance, the community piece of agriculture. It's our state's largest industry, and there's just so much that goes on to make the industry successful. So many issues and challenges that people have to overcome every year, and it's more than most people recognize. Especially as people get further and further away from the farm, they forget how challenging that is, and how important it is. I mean, every single one of us, food, fiber, fuel, and shelter that we depend on every single day, and these are the people that make that happen. So it's we'll continue. 2023 will be a year of surprises as well. There'll be things that happen. It's like, I didn't see that one coming, but we'll work through it.
We'll persevere.
That's right. So and we tell kids that are looking at careers and prospects in the future, is like, what's the one field that's not going away? So it's agriculture. Like, it will be here. Like, so we've got to figure out
food. Yeah,
that's right. So we'll be here. We'll keep working, and we'll overcome the challenges. And we appreciate y'all being part of the journey.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Visit arpbs.org for more stories and content like this from Arkansas PBS.